Cormac McCarthy is one of my favorite authors. I found him pretty early on in my reading journey, and as I have continued reading and continued reading more works of his prose continues to stand out against the rest as some of the best that I've ever read. It is just enrapturing, biblical, grand, and written with this command like I've never seen before. He has an extreme he has an extremely firm grasp of the page and of the story he wants to tell and of the characters he is telling it through. It feels like he narrates his stories almost as a god rather than an author, and I think it's an incredibly impressive feat. Most of the discussion surrounding McCarthy is in relation to his three main works, which I would say are The Road, Blood Meridian, and No Country for Old Men. And while those are all three great books in their own right, I seriously do encourage people to branch outside of those, I guess, mainstream picks and read some of his more obscure works. And when you do find this circle of true McCarthy fans who have read some more of his obscure stuff, a lot of the works you'll hear touched on by them are the Border trilogy, Child of God, Suttree. But even among groups like that, I rarely hear anything said about Outer Dark, which is remarkable to me because I think this is his second best work, of which I've read. I've read four McCarthy's, the big three, including this, and I think this is better than both The Road and No Country for Old Men. I think this is an extremely overlooked pick by him. So Outer Dark was published in 1968. It was McCarthy's second novel following The Orchard Keeper, and it takes place in rural Appalachia. We don't really get the exact region, but it's around the Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia-ish area. That sort of deep Appalachia, where it feels like it's almost kind of a world in its own. It's sort of removed. So the story of Outer Dark follows these three main forces, two of them being a brother and sister, Culla and Rinthi Holm. And their relationship is one of extreme strangeness. The book opens with Rinthi bearing a child, which you learn later in the book and also from the blurb, if you read it, that that child is Culla's. So ancestral themes right off the bat put this book in a very strange and odd category and already give it this very haunting and upsetting feel to it. And after Rinthi has this child, it kind of gets away from her physically. She no longer has possession of the child. And for the remainder of the book, it is her journey trying to get this child back. She wants her child. And so we follow Rinthi searching for her child, and then we also follow Culla, who is searching for Rinthi as she searches for her child. And then there's that key third group, which I just call them the murder gang, honestly. And if you read the book, you'll understand why I call them the murder gang. It's a group of these three men who are led by somebody who's only referred to as the bearded one. And their passages are written in italics, as you can see here. Anytime they are on the page, their section is written in italics, and they're never given more than a page at a time. But they progressively move through this world to almost a step behind Culla, or at times in the book, a step ahead or a step parallel. They are almost following Culla and Rinthi in this cat and mouse chase as some sort of malevolent being or malevolent force. And the story is just this really interesting chase of tales until they all kind of converge into this really ugly mix when all the forces kind of collide and when their paths in these Appalachian mountains eventually cross. And they cross in a very gruesome and unsettling way. So this is not a fun book by any stretch of the imagination. It's very haunting, and in a way I would say Gothic, Southern Gothic. It does a very good job of painting a picture and setting the scene. You really feel like you're in the Appalachian Mountains with these characters spectating this almost folkloric chase, and it's like you're watching a tragedy that you know is inevitable but you can't do anything about. It's like that motif of a car crash you can't look away from. This is a journey through Appalachian towns that you can't stop watching. Is extremely horrific, extremely grotesque, but also very evocative of humans and their violent nature and potential, as is present in almost all of McCarthy's books. So yeah, that's Outer Dark. That's the spoiler-free review, and now I think it's time to get into the spoiler-full review. And now, I have a lot to say about this book, about its plot, its characters, and its writing style that I really enjoy. If you remember in the introduction, I said this was my second favorite McCarthy. And I want to mention that again because I want to bring up how I feel like this is very similar to The Road, and how I think this does everything The Road does significantly better. It's a very similar, repetitive story of hiking through a haunting landscape, followed by this promise of death almost that the reader perceives. And particularly what this book gives me that I really wished The Road had given me was an extremely bitter taste of the world. The Road, I kept waiting for the scene. I kept waiting for something to happen. Like for the world to bare its teeth and show me just how bad things had gotten. And you never really got that. You got that in snippets, but you didn't get a full scene showing how ugly the world had become. You get that in full force in Outer Dark. And it's a bit of a delayed gratification. Thankfully not too delayed. The book is only about 240 pages long, and it happens in like the last 60 or something. But there are two scenes in particular that I feel like really, I wouldn't say satisfied, because that's a bit odd to say, but it was very cathartic to really be able to see a lot of these characters' potentials and just how horrible and almost eldritch they were. It was extremely heavy, and it was a heaviness that I was really wanting out of this book. It felt like it gave me what I was wanting it to give me, something I don't think The Road did. And now you can argue all day that, oh, that's the point of The Road. It's supposed to be bleak, and it's not supposed to. I don't care. I don't care. As a reader, I think this does that significantly better. And what's insane to me is that this was written 50 years before The Road was written. This was his second book, written in, like I said, 1968. The Road was written in 2008, I believe, give or take a year. 2008. And that one won a Pulitzer, and this one didn't. Even though this one, I feel, as I've said, does everything The Road does significantly better. It portrays the bleakness, it portrays the haunting evil of man, and it gives you a really disgusting taste of that haunting evil. So yeah, enough of my dunking on The Road, but I really like this book. And I think if you liked The Road, you would like this book. Another thing I think this book does extremely well is the dialect. Now, McCarthy is known for his dialect. I don't think there's a single one of his novels that isn't dialectical, and he's extremely skilled at it. I think that's one of his strongest suits, and I think most people would consider that one of his strongest suits. But I think in this book is where it really shines, because in all three, there's not really a dialect in The Road, given that it's just kind of people, modern people. But in Blood Meridian, No Country for Old Men, both of those have distinct dialects and timely dialects. And this one does as well, a regional and timely dialect, but I think it's most impressive here. He writes phrases and words and speeches phonetically in a way that really put me in that atmosphere. I feel like I've interacted with a few people in my life that have spoken like this. You know, I don't interact with them incredibly often, but I have encountered them before, and it felt very true to that region, and it was just extremely impressive, because to be able to do that it's one thing to be able to do that for a single character, but to be able to do that for an entire book and for every character, I just think it's extremely impressive, and it it's very enjoyable to read. It's a very good show of McCarthy's talent and skill as a writer. Another thing I really liked about this book was the imagery of shadow. That's something that stuck with me from the beginning and persisted throughout most of the book. And you can kind of get a sense of that that's going to be the case just from the name Outer Dark, like darkness being a theme. But the shadow specifically, I think, is a very impactful theme in this book, a very impactful symbol, because it tells a lot about each character's implicit goals and intentions and character. There's many times Kola is described as having this ominous or like mischievous, almost dirty shadow as he moves. Which, I mean, you didn't really need to know that. You didn't really need to hear that to know that Kola was bad. I mean, he impregnated his sister. That's about all you need to know. But the imagery of the shadow was just almost a cherry on top for that. And there's a few times Rinti's shadow is described, and it's not described with any of this darkness. It's not exactly pleasant, but it's a lot of times it's focused on the light rather than the light in contrast rather than the dark of the shadow. And I think focusing a lot on this imagery of the shadow also kind of harkens back to the murder gang, and how the murder gang is kind of a shadow of Kola, of his guilt, of his action. Well, Kola doesn't feel a whole lot of guilt, but it's more like an atonement or a punishment. The fact that he did such a deplorable act as this, and that he tried to erase it in such a disgraceful way of just abandoning the child. It had to go punished. Almost like an action cannot exist without its shadow, and the murder gang was the shadow to this deplorable act. And I thought it was a very, very interesting way to show that that cause and effect relationship, that almost divine karma through the force of a shadow. I thought it was particularly interesting and a nice little symbol that pervades every character of the book, encompasses everybody in that outer dark, I suppose. Final thoughts on the book. I think it's great. I think this is a classic McCarthy. And something I noted about this was that this doesn't feel any different from a book like No Country for Old Men, which was written in... When was that written? That was written after The Road, I think. I don't know. I know it was written in the 2000s, but the fact that McCarthy can write a novel in the 2000s and a novel in the 1960s, and the fact that they both sound the same, that you can tell it's the same guy writing, it's very impressive and inspiring to see someone master their style and be so comfortable in it. Master it that early and be so comfortable in it for that amount of time. It's just very inspiring and very impressive. And I would argue that this is one of McCarthy's top books. And I know not everybody's going to see it that way. And I'm not asking everybody to see it that way. But what I am asking is I think more people should talk about this book. More people should just take the time to read it. It's only about 60,000 words, 240 pages. And it's very similar to The Road. Very similar to The Road, if not better. And I think most people, if you do genuinely enjoy McCarthy and you're not just reading it for the status or for the lit bro points, if you do genuinely enjoy McCarthy's prose, I think you will really enjoy this book. And I just want to see more people talk about it. I want to see more people discussing it and adding it to their catalog of reference points and of McCarthy hallmarks, because I think this is a fantastic addition to his bibliography. It's arguably as haunting as Blood Meridian. That might be a bit of a stretch because Blood Meridian's pretty haunting, but this like that has almost no redeeming qualities, or the characters, the humanity in this book has almost no redeeming qualities. So yeah, if you're looking for an extremely bleak Appalachian version of The Road, this is certainly your book. It's not going to be for everybody, but I hope it's for some of you. because I do think that this is a particularly cool piece of literature. So yeah, that is Outer Dark. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you thought about Outer Dark if you've read it, or if you're curious, or any McCarthy for that matter. I'm happy to just have this be a McCarthy comment section. I could talk about him for a while. Yeah. So, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.